I hope you're all having a lovely day. It's getting quite cold here and it's been raining on and off all day, so the lighting's not great, but while I've got an opportunity, I thought I would share the next step, part 2 of me doing this quilt. Now, once again, I'm trying to be very mindful of not giving away the pattern or the design in any way, because it's not mine. It belongs to Sue Garrett, and you can buy the pattern from her at Flower Child Quilts. I will put that in the description later, but I thought I would just hop on and show you my process. It's I think from speaking to other people, my process is quite laborious and time consuming, but it's what I'm comfortable with. Now, I did show you this piece last time. This has been all hand pieced. I am a little bit frustrated that some of my points don't meet. I tried very hard to ensure that they would. This one down here is a little bit off. This one here, it's mainly these 4 here that I need to worry about when I piece it all together. So yeah, this one's off by a couple of mil. This one's off by about a mil. It's not too bad, but it's not the greatest. This one's off a fraction as well, and that one's pretty well spot on. So that's how I would like them all to be. But I didn't think much of my process until I stopped in at Sew B last week, and Beck and one of her other lovely ladies, and I apologise sincerely, I can't remember your name, looked at my hand stitching and couldn't believe how fine it was. Now, they did ask me how I get such little stitches. You might be able to see down here. Oh, come on, it won't zoom in on me now, the rotten thing. So this one here is a good example. There's stitches down here. Now, I do not do running stitch. I should, let's show you, hey. I've got a tiny bit, I should rethread this, but I just can't be bothered at the moment. Now let's get a little piece of fabric. Okay, here's a little square I've cut out. Am I going to use that in my quilt? I'll get to these in a minute too, guys. I think it's the only fabric I've got here. Actually, what's up here? Here we go. There should be, I've got scrap bits over here. Okay, so this might be good. This is the back of, let's go in here, hey. Now, I don't knot it. What I do is, so I work from the back, and what I do is do a little, I haven't got my glasses on, so let me see if I've got any here in my bag of tricks. I did think I had a pair of glasses in here, but I don't. Oh, there's the rubbish I couldn't find the other day that I went to throw in the bin. I put it in my bag so I didn't leave it behind. Okay, so what I do to start is, so I've just come in the back of the work. We're pretending this is a seam, okay? Maybe I can fold it over and pretend it's a seam, a join. So, okay, let's actually do it properly, hey? It's a bit of linen. So let's pretend I've got 2 pieces of fabric here. Let's pretend I'm joining 2 of the squares together, okay, for the quilt. I'm just doing a demo bit here, so we're just going to pretend I've got 2 squares that I'm joining together. Let's trim that off so it's a bit, So what I do first, and again, we're pretending that this is 2 squares, 2 of the pieces that are going to go in the quilt, okay? We're just pretending this is just a demo. So what I do first is, I'm going to have to get more thread out anyway. Okay, let's get some thread out. And I do like to use these vintage threads when I'm quilting, when I'm piecing this together. Now, this is, I've never done hand piece quilt like this before. I did many years ago start a hexagon, a couple, but they haven't gotten very far. They're in limbo now. So this one I'm really motivated to finish. But in my infinite wisdom, I decided I wanted to actually do a bed size quilt instead of the throw that Sue has designed in the pattern. And I'll show you quickly the figures I've done. Make sure I don't knock that crystal off. And I may be wrong. My maths isn't great. So the original pattern, let's zoom back out again, that Sue has designed is, if I've counted it correctly, 36 12-inch squares, so 36 of these, I believe. That doesn't sound enough. Let me see what else I've written in here. Doesn't feel, yeah, 36 12-inch blocks. Okay, so for the throw in the original pattern, Sue's put in 36 12-inch blocks. Okay, so that's, I've done that correctly, I think. That's the original pattern. This is a 12-inch block, which has 9 4-inch blocks in it, okay? I'm going off track here a bit. Now, my math that isn't very good, I've worked out if I want to make a double bed size quilt cover or quilt, I need why haven't I written that down? Why haven't I done that? I've written 567 4-inch squares, but I haven't written how many 12-inch squares I need. I'm not very good. That I know why, because I can't do my 7 time table or 9 in my head. I get stuck on those two, the 7 9s. So whatever 7 9s are, that's how many I need. Got a complete brain blank again with this. If I want to do a queen size quilt, I'm going to need 8 by 9 12-inch squares. And if I want to do a king size quilt, I'm going to need 9 by 9 12-inch squares. So 81 12-inch blocks in a king size quilt. And then I worked out an average. This is just average, and it depends on, I've just averaged it from this 12-inch one. And it's going to depend on how many pieces I put in it all together. But I've worked out, on average, I'm going to need 3,969 pieces to do a king size quilt. But anyway, that's just a bit of going off track there. Probably no one interested in it. But anyway, let's get back to this. So if I'm actually joining 2 pieces together, I've got my 2 pieces of, I'll do one in shortly. Maybe I should go, I'm all over the shop, guys, I'm sorry. I'm thinking too far ahead of myself. What I wanted to show you today was how I cut the squares, what I'm doing to prepare, okay? So I might put this aside for a few minutes and come back to it because I'm jumping ahead. And would you believe, I don't have a pin out here. When I say to you, I can't find where I've put the needle, can you remind me that I've put it in the little crystal bowl so I don't lose it? It's just there for a minute. Okay, now let's get back to what I originally hopped on here for. So Oh, sorry, this stand. Why won't you please stand? Okay, it's top heavy. As you can probably see, most of these squares, except for this one up here, and that's just the first one I did, so I hadn't worked it out by then, I have put iron-on interfacing on. Why have I done that? Because I'm using a big variety of fabrics that are very extremely different thicknesses. This poor piece, I've been dragging it around everywhere to try and find fabrics to match it, and it's looking a bit grubby. So what I mean by that is, let's go over here, for example. So this piece is, to me, more of an upholstery fabric. It's a heavier, upholstery fabric. This piece here is quite thick. It's an embroidered linen. It's a beautiful quality linen, and it's quite rigid, but with that embroidery on it, it makes it quite heavy. This is a newer cotton quilting fabric, so it's a nice weight. But then when I get to these pieces, like this piece from Sue that's been reclaimed from an old duvet, and this one here, and this piece here from Beck, some of these pieces, this piece here that came from a cushion from the 1920s that I pulled apart to use, this is like tissue paper, this one. This one is a crepe, so it's got a bit of stretch in it, a bit of movement in it. The Liberty lawn is quite fine. So what I found when I started piecing it together, with those different thicknesses of fabrics, they were warping and twisting and pulling inward. So my 4.5-inch blocks were not coming out 4.5 inches, which really frustrated me. And I did put a post on saying, does anyone know how I can remedy this? And I think everyone said, just go with the wonk. I couldn't do that, because if I was, 2 mil short on this side and 3 mil short on this side and 2 mil short here, it's just going to be a big mess. So in my mind, I had to work out how to make this remain square. And I finally thought, well, let's put some interfacing on it to give it all a bit more structure. And it seems to be working. So with that said, what I've been doing is getting all my fabrics that I want to use. Now, again, I have prepared a whole heap of fabrics. I don't know if I'm going to use them all, but what I've found for me, if I have them all prepared, cut up with the interfacing on them, when I get a moment, I can sit down and start piecing pieces together. It's going to be so much easier for me. I'm going to be so much more motivated if I have these squares ready. So I want to show you how I prepare for that. These are some reproduction 1930s, I suppose, prints. And again, I don't know if I'm going to use all these. This is a cute little one. So that, I'm trying to think what I've got more or less of. So as you can see, it hasn't been ironed on very well. I have ironed on some interfacing. Now, I must admit, there has been occasions when I've done this back the other way. What I have done to some pieces, especially the embroidered pieces like this one, is draw up the shape on the interfacing first and then line it up. I mean, I've gone, a few mil larger all the way around so I can trim it back to size. So I can line up the embroidered pieces nice and centrally, or, some of them are offset. Let's have a look. This is probably better to use these ones as a demo, actually. So these ones, for example, I've cut the 4-inch squares out. Then I can come along to the embroidered pieces, even these beautiful 1920s or 30s vintage Sanderson linen. I cut out, draw up my 4-inch square on my interfacing, trim it back a bit, not necessarily exactly to size, leave a bit of a border around it, and then I line it up in the center of the image or the embroidery. What's a good example? I can turn it over and line it up in the center, iron it on, and then trim it back to the 4-inch size, okay? In saying that, they're not all centralized. Some of them are offset, like this one. But if I draw up that 4-inch square first, it gives me a much better guide to how I can centralize or offset these embroideries so they're all balanced. As you may have guessed, I cannot handle if my pieces are not balanced well. So again, this one feels a little bit high up here, but I've tried to fit, probably should have centralized the roses a bit more, but then I would have lost a lot. Anyway, there might have been a reason I couldn't. It might have been the edge of the runner or the table center. I don't know. I can't remember. Okay, so that's one way I do it. I cut out, I draw up the shapes first, and then iron them onto the back so I can see how they've been centered. I hope that makes sense because I haven't actually done a demo. The other way I'm doing it with these all over prints, the small prints like this, iron on the interfacing first, then I come along with my rule. Is that actually square? Not really. And I get a friction marker. I'm doing this a bit upside down. The interfacing's ironed onto the fabric. This is a reproduction 1930s fabric. I come along with my rule, my friction pen, and I draw a line. It's gone off the fabric a bit, I think. Then I decide what size I want to cut. So what have I not got many of? I've got a box here, so it's not going to matter too much. Let's do some, I think I've got many 2-inch by 2-inch. So let's just double check it actually has 2-inch squares in it. I'm sure it does. No, it doesn't. It's got 2.5. 1.5 by 2.5. Let's do a couple of them. So I line her up. Whoops. Get rid of the program. Let's go 2.5. Now, it's not in this shot, is it? Now, you may notice my line is a little bit inside, a mil or two inside that original line I did. That's because I want to cut this a little bit larger, because sometimes when I iron it, it shrinks in a little bit. Then I can trim it all back to size. So I'm doing 2.5 inch here. And I can just do big pieces of this. 2.5 inch, and then we want 1.5 inch. So let's square this bit off. Let's not throw it on the ground either. Oh, goodness gracious. So squaring this bit off. Nice and square. Now we want some 1.5 inch sections. Make sure it's square, come inside that line a mil or two so we can trim it back. And it's not in the shot, but it will be in a minute. I apologize. 1.5 inch, make sure it's square. Inside that line a mil or two. Whoops, not quite square. Let's zoom in a bit, hey? Hopefully that's in the shot. It's just in, I think. So I'm just drawing up 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch. Now, how many shapes do you think I've done that I've done the complete wrong size? Either too big or too small. It's okay if they're too big because then I can cut them back. So I'm just squaring it off, coming inside that line a mil or two. That's to ensure this is slightly larger. So once it's all ironed, I can trim it back to size. Sometimes the ironing pulls it in a fraction. Again, make sure it's square. come inside that line a little bit here to make sure this is a little larger all the way around. Oh, you rotter. It's a bit hard to see from back here. So I just go along and draw in some, I could come in here and do a 2.5 by 2.5, which I do sometimes, just do different ones. Now, I don't think that's going to fit a 1.5. No, doesn't quite fit. So that's okay. I'll show you what I do with those scraps shortly. Then I come along, crikey, and trim with my scissors. I'm not using a roller, a quilting, like a, what are they called? A quilting mat and a roller cutter. I'm doing it all by hand. This is probably very boring. This is why I tried to do most of it and have it ready to show you instead of asking you to sit here and watch all this. I'm just going to check and see if I've missed any comments. Doesn't look like it. If you wanting to comment or ask questions or anything, please type it in the chat box, and I'm trying to keep an eye on it so I can answer you or show you if whatever you'd like to see. Okay, just trimming. Hopefully you can hear me. I've got a new, is it a lavalier? Is that what it's called? Now, let's trim this bit. Now this bit is what I'm calling a scrap piece, and it's going to go into my scrap box. And it's my scrapbooks is overflowing a bit. Oh crikey, I've got, is it that one? I've got cotton coming out everywhere. Let's just try and tidy that up a bit, hey? Okay, so that's my scrap box, and we will come back to that shortly. I do think I showed you that last time, but we will come back and have another look at it shortly, and I'll show you what I do with all the bits that aren't quite big enough to use in the quilt. Okay, let's trim up some of these shapes, and again, they're not exactly square, so I might even come back with my ruler and my roller cutter later and try and get them all to the same size. But for now, I might not. I might just, what I'm thinking of doing is cutting out some cardboard templates, quite rigid cardboard, the size of the pieces I need, so I can lay the cardboard down and trace around it and get all the same size pieces. And then make a small, I probably won't need a small one if I do that. So I cut out my pieces with the interfacing, and then I file them in my box. So I've tried to group them all together, the sizes. Where's that rogue bit come from? Where has that rogue bit come from? Over there maybe? Is that his size? Yep, over there. Okay. So the pieces we just cut out, 2.5 by 2.5 inch shapes are here. My 2.5 by 1.5 inch shapes are here. So now I've got this box full of shapes. I've got all different kinds of fabrics, I think all the required sizes for the quilt piecing. Now, as I said, I don't know if I'm going to use all of these. I'm fairly certain I will need more than this. At the moment, I have cut, well, not including those pieces I just cut, I've worked out I have cut 1,081 pieces So I've just added another, what, I can't remember, 4 or 5 pieces. By my calculations, I'm going to need at least 4 times that, 3,969 pieces. So as Sue has said, this is a bit of a perpetual project. Okay, so this is how I am preparing to do my quilt. I was wondering why these were moving so nicely. I've taken all these out. So they're my 4.5 by 4.5 inch pieces. And again, don't know if I'm going to use them all. Let's have I might show you a few again. There's a cross stitch one. These ones are just going to go, they don't need to be worked. So they will be something like this one. See this big one in the center here. And looking at Sue's, you don't have to put, it might help if it's around the right way. I think she's got sometimes 2 in one of the 12-inch blocks. This fabric here I have been coveting for a few years now. It's a piece of allegedly 1920s Sanderson linen. It's exquisite. I originally picked it up to make a needlebook. I've still got enough left to make a needlebook, but I've been umming and ahhing for a couple of weeks as to whether I should cut into this for this quilt. And I decided, you know what? I'm hoping this quilt's going to be an heirloom, so why not put these beautiful fabrics in? Again, another piece of Sanderson, a piece of mid-century hand-embroidered linen, another piece of Sanderson. It's just gorgeous. A piece of embroidered. This one I'm not sure about because of the door. I love it, but I don't know if it's going to work because I've got primarily flowers. This is a piece I got from Sue. A lot of these are pieces I got from Sue. That's from Sue. Sue's got the same fabric as this, but this is one I got from a resource centre. That's from Sue. That's from Sue. That's from Sue. Crikey, I got a bit from Sue. That's from Sue. That's a vintage sheet piece that I got from an op shop. This is a piece of a mid-century tablecloth. Not sure if I'll use it. To me, it's a bit yellow. I don't know. Again, don't know if these are all going to go in. That's a bit of a mid-century tablecloth as well. This is a piece of crepe, which I have worked a piece of this in already, which seems to work okay. This is a piece of a linen napkin. This was an embroidery that someone gave me, and it looked like they'd started to make a coat hanger cover, but they didn't finish it, so I've ended up using that, cutting that. This is an applique napkin. This is some of these might have to be cut back to smaller pieces. If you look closely, I've cut it to the 4.5 inch, but the fabric doesn't come all the way up to the interfacing, so it may be that I might not be able to quite get that 1/4 inch seam allowance in. This was a beautiful doily. The work on this is exquisite, and again I hesitated severely as to whether I should cut that up, but look at that. This piece is from Nairi. I've got 2 of these, and again I've got this overlap here. This was a table center, I believe. This was from a tablecloth that had holes in it. This is a mid-century napkin. This was a tablecloth again. And I'm going through these again to give you an idea of where you can source pieces from. You know, you don't just have to use fabrics as such, you know, like quilting fabrics. This was a pillowcase, and this was the edge of the pillowcase, but I didn't want to lose this with my 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I've stitched an extension on it so it'll come up and we won't lose that applique. This was a piece I bought from Nairi. This was a table center, but I love the colors, so I decided that can go in. This was a pillowcase. mid-century pillowcase. This was a table centre. This was a table centre, I believe. Another table centre or tray cloth. Another bit from Nairi, some strawberries. And I've ended up with a few little strawberry pieces here and there. I think they're going to go in, but I'm still not 100% decided yet. More of that table centre. This was a table centre. Another bit of the cushion. Some Sanderson. This was a piece from Lucello in Melbourne. This was some reclaimed duvet from Sue. Another piece of reclaimed duvet from Sue. This is from Lucello. I bought a vintage scrap pack from Lucello. This is from Lucello. And again, look at that edge. I might have to make this piece smaller. And this is a piece from Lucello. These are some pieces I've pieced together already. Some 4.5-inch squares. So they can start, well, I want to collect more before I start joining them together. You know, you can put it, see this, I don't know if that's going to work. This piece here, it feels a bit too muted to fit into a, and I'm just roughly throwing this together so we've got a bit of an idea. Need some space. And again, this is not, I've just thrown these down. They may not, it probably won't pull together like that, but see, I'm not sure this will work. It feels a bit too muted to me. But in saying that, that doesn't work for me. This should. I like that. And Sue does mention in the instructions, you know, if you're not sure, put in green. Look, that works. The green seems to be working. I'm not sure about that colour. And this is what I do, just go through. Hopefully this Sanderson will work because I adore it. Isn't that funny? It's similar tones to that piece there, but this works in so much better. So that's what we'll do, just play around. That's too close to that, so that won't work. Not that this is going to go together like this. I just want to show you how different it looks by just changing one block. Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm going to make up a whole heap of these 4-inch squares before I start piecing it. So I've got a lot more options and I can balance it. See, that won't work because it's the same flower, so I won't put two of the same in the one 12-inch. That one's not too bad. And this one, I won't put this one in if I did use these pieces because that's the same as that. I don't like that. I don't want them together like that. I'm not sure about these ones with all the white space around them in the center. It just feels a bit too bland. There's another, so that one won't work. See, too much white, I think. These ones have got too much white as well. I know you can't see them there, but what have we got? I think that's still got too much white. That might work. What about this? Yeah, I don't know. That's a bit too much. That's a bit too in your face, I think. That one might work. I don't mind that. That actually might work. Here I am thinking, I don't think this yellow is going to go in, but it doesn't look too bad. It's not too bad. So this is what I'll do when I get more of these pieced together. I don't mind that either. That bark cloth. And here we go, the hero green again. Sue was so right. Look, green, it works. Anything with green in it. Look at this one. Isn't that interesting? So there you go. That's how I am preparing to put this together. Now, the other thing I do is I need to modify this a bit because I took all this with me to baseball the other day. So when I went to watch my son play, I sat there with my bag and did a little bit of stitching while I was watching the game. And of course, I actually didn't get much stitching done because I was watching the game. But I'll take a little bag to when I go to appointments or meetings and try and get some stitching in. That's usually the only time I get to do any. I'm flat chat, still sorting through everything here at home. Still have absolutely no idea what the move is going to happen. But yeah, I don't get a huge amount of time to get stitching done at the moment. But this is my prep. So I hope that, can you hear that? Sounds like a bloody generator or something across the road. I found last time I used this lavalier, it seemed to cut out a lot of the background noise. There were motorbikes zooming past, two strokes that were really loud, and it didn't seem to come up on the when I played back. So hopefully you can't hear that. I feel like I'm yelling over the top of it. Bear with me for a moment. I apologize. I'm just putting these back in a pile so I can keep them organized and not lose them and not end up with them all over the floor or the ground because I'm outside. Oh, goodness me, Tom, what are you doing? See, this one here, this is a good example. This is one that I pieced together, the first ones. That's a bit of vintage Sanderson too. This is one of the first ones I pieced together without putting the interfacing on it first. And look, once I pressed it, look how much it's pulled in because of the different fabrics. So that one's a good example of why I decided to put the interfacing on all the pieces. Right, now I've got all those back together. I've got, as I said, I've got about 1,085, 86 pieces in here now, which is about a quarter of what I think I'm going to need. But as I also said, I don't know if I'm going to use all those pieces. So now I was going to show you how I, oh crikey, they've all slid down in the underneath, how I piece them together. Let's actually start piecing one, hey? So what's a shape we can do? Let's pick, I could do one of them. Let's pick a 2.5 inch, maybe with an embroidery or a nice feature. What have we got? There's a bit of Sanderson. Oh, that one's nice too. Oh, there's some Liberty. Oh, there's some nice pieces in this. Oh, look at that vintage piece there. That's from Beck. And that, look at that. Oh, anyway, let's see if we can find what's down here. Here's a piece of embroidered. That doesn't have, I wonder why that doesn't have interfacing on the back. That's very odd. I thought they all had interfacing. That's a nice piece. Wonder if we can use that one. I'm not sure about that, Rose. I've already done one with that, so I'll hang on to that for a minute. Look at this bark cloth. It's stunning. No more embroidered pieces by the looks. So let's go with this poppy, hey? Now, what I want to do is find two 1.5 by 2.5 inch pieces to put around it. That's these guys. No, it's not. They're not long enough. That might be these guys, I think. Yes, this is better. So I want something like a blue or an aqua to go down this side. Do I have anything in here all ready to go? These ones are a bit stuck together. I want a blue or an aqua. Yeah, might be a bit too dulled down, that colour. Some lovely, these pieces here are old feed sack that I bought from Beck. I want a blue or an aqua. That's obviously blue, but oh, it might work actually. Look, it picks up that little blue flower in there. And I also want something maybe purple or pink. No, that's too soft. No. I don't know. I can't explain how I'm picking these colours. I don't know. I just look for... That feels too light to me with that strong red. There's a nice vintage piece. That's another option. I think I like this one though. Yeah, let's stick with that piece for now. There's a purple. Oh, crikey, backfire. So it's probably not a generator. I don't think I like that purple with it. We'll set it aside for now though. What about an aqua? No. Pink, pink. What else do we have? Oh, that's not bad. I don't mind that. Oh, green. No. There's another blue. No, too washed out. Ooh. Nah. I think that's a bit too in your face for there. I'd like to try and get some more of this neon in though. I've got little pops here and there, but that's a big chunk. Oh, here's a bit of... What about that purple? That looks a bit better, doesn't it? What do you think of that? And I need a 1.5 by 1.5 in there, maybe in a yellow. Let's just make sure. Red. That light, that's too light. That blue. I don't know where I've put my Emma Newman fabrics. I want to cut some more of those. Oh, that's not bad, is it? No, let's stay with this bright colour. I want to keep it nice and bright. There's another. I've already used that in another one similar, so I don't want to put that one in there. I'm making a mess with this pile though. Ooh. Oh, there's a yellow. Oh, look at that blue. Oh, no, it's too dark. Oh, there's another blue. What about that one? No, I think those prints, they're both Liberty. That's a tanner lawn and that's a cotton. But I think they're too busy to have together. Yeah. Don't mind that actually. No. No. No, we don't want more embroidered bits because we've got that focal one. I actually think I like that bit of Liberty Betsy in there. Now I want to find a... I've got little 1.5 inches spread out everywhere in here. I'd like something yellow, I think. I can't see any yellow in here. Hopefully I've got yellow. Is this boring as all get out? I hope you're getting something from it. I didn't mean to drag it out so much. There's some strawberries. That's not too bad. It's not what I was after, but that's not too bad. Let's see what else we can find. I've been trying so hard to keep these piles neat and organized, and look at what I'm doing now. No. Surely I've got, oh, some of these need to be pressed properly again. I did do some rough pressing because I didn't want to press out some lines I'd already drawn. So some pieces aren't pressed on properly. Surely I've got some yellow. I'm sure I cut up, don't like that one. Sure I cut up some yellow pieces. Come on, crikey. Doesn't seem to be any yellow in there. What about this pile? Oh. What's in here? That's too close to this Betsy up here, so I don't think that'll work. Maybe. It's not yellow, but no. No. I think, no, the print's too much the same. So again, I am trying to talk you through my process and what I'm thinking. So it's got a bit of yellow, but they're both Betsy. They're the same print. I think they're both Betsy. And I'm not sure if I like that, the same right next to each other. Like that. I really thought, oh, there's a bit of yellow. Don't know now. Really don't know about that, to be honest. Let's flick through this pile. I want some contrasting colours, but I also want to have them complement each other. And I'm also looking at volume. So there's a lot going on in my head here. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't know how to explain my process because I sort of just audition pieces, and sometimes sort of think, oh, that's it, that works. But see, I like that yellow. Look at that. I think that's it, guys. That's the only one of that yellow I've got left too. That was a piece from Nairi, I think. It's either from Nairi or the cello, which I've got a feeling Nairi's bits may have come from the cello anyway, because they're very similar. Crikey, I've got a mess there now. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is, let's do these pieces. I want to join these two pieces together. So what I normally do is baste them. Where's our needle? Make sure they line up nice and well there. That yellow is a little bit wider, but that's okay. We can trim that back. Because this edge is going to be joined onto that, I'm going to slide that over so that corner lines up. Okay, so now I'm just going to baste this together with a bit of a, I don't want to go too high up here because that's where I'm going to do my seam. But I am going to try and come back down here a couple of stitches just to try and stabilize this so it doesn't wiggle around while I'm stitching. Okay, so there's my baste. That is basted. Then I need to find a cotton that I'm actually going to stitch with, and of course I've only got yellow in here. I do occasionally stitch with the crochet cotton, but I don't think I've got a needle large enough out here. Let's look in my ongoing needle book I've been working on. There should be a needle in here. Here we go, look at that. That might work. This poor needle book, I need to finish it. Let's see. That's a long bit of thread to do that little bit, isn't it? Okay, so let's see if I can actually thread this without my glasses on. I feel like I'm going cross-eyed. Gee, it's getting cool out here. My fingers are like ice blocks. I do actually have a light on, but I think it's gone flat. Oh, come on, you rotter. Okay, let's try the other end of the thread, because threads have a direction and you're supposed to thread them as they come off the reel. There we go. I was threading the wrong end. Needles have a front and a back as well, so you can turn the needle around also. I think this is going to be too heavy, but I'm going to go ahead for this demo. Now, before I start stitching, I get out my rule and I come in, and with my friction marker I draw on my quarter inch line. Then we get our thread, and again this is going to be too heavy, but for this demo, now as I said earlier, I don't do knots. I come in the front here or the back, leave a tiny little tail, or you can trim that off later, then come back up close to it. So there's our little tail over there. I come back up close to it and make sure I don't pull that tail through. Go back in pretty much where we first came in, right on top of that tail. And let's just do a little holding stitch. And try and come back up in that same spot again. So there's no knots, there's no bulkiness. So you shouldn't feel knots, and knots also cause a bit of wear as the quilt ages as well. So now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't do running stitch. I don't like the look it gives, and I don't like how it sits. So I do pretty much a stab stitch and just go up and down on that line, up and down. And this is where I mentioned in the beginning of this live that my process is incredibly laborious, but I'm thinking long term. I'd like this to be an heirloom, you know, to be passed through to my children and possibly their children if they ever end up having children. So I'm trying very hard to do the best I can to ensure it will last longer and try and hopefully it will be able to go through a gentle wash cycle. Might have to be hand washed, but I'm hoping if I construct it well enough, it may be able to be washed. And again, this isn't the best thread to use, and it could potentially, because it's thicker, it could potentially cause a bit of wear when the quilt gets older. Just a bit of friction on the thicker thread. But since I was a silly goose and forgot to bring out a thread that's not bright yellow to do this, we're just going to use this for today. I am doing these stitches quite close. Again, because I want it to try and last as long as possible. Okay, so when I get to the end, I just do another one of those holding stitches. Pretty well just go over the same spot a couple of times. I try and stitch through the actual thread itself, which again, I could potentially cut it off doing this, but stitch through the thread and it holds it well, and then I just trim off the tail. Now we pull out that basting stitch, which I didn't end it off, so we can just pull it out with the needle. And then there's our, let's do some finger pressing. Sometimes I come along with, done some finger pressing, sometimes I'll come along with the scissors, and you've got to be careful though, because it can stretch the fabric a little bit more exuberant because it's got the interfacing on it. So I'm just pressing it, essentially, trying to press it open. So there's one bit done. Then we sew this bit together. Same process, line it up, baste it together. Where did that basting needle go? Okay, let's baste it. I probably should put a needle or two in here before I start basting, because it tends to shift around. I've got to keep checking. It can shift around a bit. Now remember, I'm not stitching too close to this edge because that's where I want to come through and do my 1/4 inch seam. So baste along here, and as I mentioned in the last one, I turn around and go back the other way, and that just helps stabilize that fabric, because if I just do, especially with the smaller pieces, if I just do a, let's cut this off first. I've got to try and remember to keep it in the shot, I apologize. If I just do the one line, that fabric still has a tendency to shift a bit, like, you know, wiggle around a bit as I'm stitching. So I've done that. Let's come back with our rule and draw in our 1/4 inch seam allowance. Another thing you've got to remember is when you're drawing these seam allowances, remember to line up the same on each side of the line every time you do it. So I usually go just over the edge of that fabric in here, just so you can just see it's just creeped under that line. Actually, I haven't done that. I've tried to do it exactly on top of that line. But what you need to remember to do, which clearly I haven't, is put this line in the same spot every time so you get that same seam allowance, because that could potentially mean the difference of 2 mil. Okay, let's go back with our crochet cotton and do our holding stitch. Leave a little tail. Again, you can leave that a bit longer and trim it back later. Now I try to actually bring this holding stitch in a little bit, because when I come to trim up this and square it off a bit, I could potentially cut that off if I go too close to the edge. So here we go. Get in the blinking shot, you knucklehead. Or what does Josh say? You spoonhead. Any of those who might watch Josh Neal, the wildlife rehabilitator, he calls things spoonheads. My family used to say shovelhead, which probably isn't very politically correct. Although technically a spoon's just a smaller shovel, isn't it? Okay. So again, maybe I should zoom out a bit so I'm still in the shot. Again, I'm just doing that stab stitch. I don't like the finished look when I do running stitch. So I'm doing teeny tiny stab stitch all the way along this line. As you saw, I used a friction marker on this piece, on these pieces. Now that will iron out. I have noticed though, I did buy an inexpensive one last year, which I thought was good. It was probably a fraction of the price of the friction markers. These friction markers, when they first came out, I worked out very quickly that they were heat dissolvable. I think in the 90s, the early to mid 90s when they first came out, and I used these on my fabric because I worked out they were very similar to the fabric markers that were 10 times the price. But when these first came out, you could get these for under $2 each. Now you're looking at $10, for goodness sake. So I did try to buy some inexpensive ones that were about $2 or less. However, what I've noticed with them, if I don't iron those lines off with the inexpensive ones within a day or two, you end up with a shadow, which I don't like, a ghosting shadow. It's sort of a white, I suppose. So yes, I do not recommend the inexpensive friction markers. They do leave ghosting behind, which isn't good, especially if you've drawn on the front of your work. I haven't seen that happen with these friction markers yet, and as I said, I have been using them for many years, so hopefully they will continue. I think I haven't looked at the proper fabric markers for years. I do have a couple somewhere. I used to buy them from, was it Zigzag or On Point? Maybe both of them, in Newcastle. Or Waratah and Georgetown, I think. But anyway, that's beside the point. They're packed away somewhere in one of my sewing bags or baskets or boxes or something. So I use the friction markers. But as I was saying, I don't know. I haven't looked to see how much the fabric ones are yet. They might now be around the same price as the friction markers, so we might actually be better off to buy the proper fabric ones. I don't know. How did that yellow get in there? That must be a bit that's been cut off. It's split through that thread. I'll trim it up. I don't want to trim off the... There we go. Let's fix that. Yeah, so the proper fabric markers might be around the same price as the friction markers these days. I don't know. I haven't had a look. I can't even get my words out now. I'm getting tired. I was going to force myself to have a rest day today because I've been feeling a lot better. I actually stopped taking my seizure medication and I'm feeling almost like a new person. However, I'm still getting horrendous pain in my feet, which makes it very difficult to stand some days. And today was one of those days. So because I've been on the go for about a week, I was going to try and force myself to rest today because my feet are horrendous. But I just can't stop. I can't get my brain to rest. I'm just stressing about trying to get more stuff moved out of here. So, of course, I got up and did more linens and posted them on my D-Stash page on Instagram. If you're new here, that link should be up in my bio. I'm just de-stashing vintage linens and fabrics like these embroidered ones. I've ended up with way too many over the last 35 years or so. Gee, that makes me sound really old, doesn't it? So yes, I haven't ended up resting. It's getting dark again. Why do I do these videos so late in the day? I decided this morning if I was going to do it, I'm going to do it earlier in the day so it doesn't get dark, doesn't get cold. And what am I doing? Later in the day. Anyway, let's try and get this finished. As I mentioned earlier, how many times have I said that in this video? As I mentioned earlier, my process is quite laborious. I think a lot of you would likely look at this and go, oh my goodness, I'm not going to go to that much trouble. But this is what I'm doing, and the rate I'm going, I think I'll be lucky if this is finished within the next 10 years. Let's do a holding stitch at the end here, little holding stitch, trim it off. Let's pull out this basting stitch, zoink, zoink, oops, zoink, 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 and open her up. Finger press that seam. I will use an iron on these later, but while I'm piecing them together, I usually just do a finger press or a scissor fold like that. Now, where is good on? Geez, I'm a knucklehead sometimes. Where's the first piece we stitched together? What have I done with that? Oh my goodness. That first piece I did. Oh, right under my nose. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now I want to join that to that. So we come back here. What I'm mindful of, see how I've folded that seam over in that direction, but that one's in the same direction. They're not going to fit together nicely if I keep that there. So I want to fold one in the other direction. It doesn't matter which one is which, I don't think. But I want it folded in the opposite direction. It depends on the heaviness of some of the fabrics. Some of them just don't like to go back onto themselves. Okay. Then, because they're in opposite directions, we can butt them up right against each other, and I'm pushing them with my fingers in that. My thumb's getting pushed that way and this pointer's pulling this way. So I'm just trying to make sure I butt them right up against each other so those points meet nicely. So while that's there, look at that. Look at the overlap down here. So hopefully that is excess. I mean, obviously it is excess, but hopefully this Betsy isn't too narrow. Okay, look at that. So that, I can see what's happened. That doesn't come up here. I must be too far over. Okay, I was a bit far over. So now that's better. My primary focus for me is to try and make sure these seams meet nice up there. My second focus is to get these pieces to match up. So what I'm going to do for this piece is, because it's not quite sitting where I want it to, I'm going to pull out some pins, and I rarely do this, and let's do the points first. Make sure they're butted up nicely against each other. And I'm just going to put a pin in here, if I can get it in. Crikey, that's thick. Then I want to see that's not quite meeting, so I want to try and manipulate that a bit to get that to meet. I'll put another pin in down here for now. Then I want to check this edge and get that all to meet up nice and evenly. And I'm going to put a pin in there. Now, we want this based in thread again. And I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to do a little loose holding stitch on this side, because this fabric, I must have stretched it. Probably when I did the scissor, it's a bit stretched. So I'm trying to force it to stay where I want it to stay. Now this isn't ideal, and look, I'm not a professional quilter. I used to work in a quilt shop, so I know a little bit, and I've got some friends that are fabulous quilters, but this is a bit of a no-no, manipulating the fabric like this, I believe, but this is my process. And it seems to work for me, especially when I've got the interfacing on. So again, I'm just coming in, going back the other way to try and stabilize it a bit, to reduce the chance of it twisting and moving around while I'm stitching. Okay. Don't know where everyone is today. I've usually got a lot more people on watching. In fact, it's been really quiet on Instagram, and I'm starting to think that I've been shadow banned. No one seems to be around. Okay, let's remove those pins now, because they're also contributing to twisting the fabric. Okay, that's nicely basted together. Let's put this back together so I don't spill them, because I'm good at doing that. Okay, that's basted together. Make sure we've got it around the right way before we put it together. Yep. Now I want to come along and do try and make sure that line is right on that edge. And I don't know if you can see, I've got that line right on the edge of this piece down here, but when we get up here, it's pulling away a little bit. So I want to just gently push that in, or hold that in with my fingers while I draw my line, my stitch line on. Oops, it's shifted, so let's, okay, there we go. Now let's stitch this bit together. Again, we start with our holding stitch. It's also another reason I don't do the running stitch, apart from the fact that I really don't like the look of it when I'm done. It's very hard to do a running stitch through the layers of fabric and the interfacing. So let's just continue with our stab stitch, try and get it on the line. If I can't get it on the line, I try and go slightly above it, just sitting very closely on top of it. Again, very laborious methods that I implement. Miss Willow's sitting in on her bed with her jacket or her parka on because she's freezing cold. I'm actually just out here in a long sleeve t-shirt at the moment, but it is getting cool. As I mentioned earlier, my fingers are like ice blocks. Don't know if you can see, this is starting to warp or gather a little bit, the fabric. So that tells me I'm pulling it a little bit too tight. So I need to try and ease up on that a little bit. When I get to around here, if I can hold this top bit with these two fingers, I tend to hold it like this to stitch. It's a bit easier when we get this far in. It's quite difficult in this light to see without my glasses on too, so if you're seeing me stitching incredibly wonkily, crooked, there's two contributing factors there. See, I did that stitch a little bit too low. I'm going to go a little bit above the line if we can't get it on the line. Again, very slow process doing this, but the final outcome should be quite glorious. Talking about laborious, I was watching Missy's YouTube this morning of when she went to ATC. Is it ATC? It's AQC, the Australian Quilting Convention. AQC, not all terrain. Anyway, some of the quilts that Missy showed were incredible, including her own. And I cannot imagine the amount of time and effort that's gone into those quilts, the amount of stitches. You know, it's absolutely incredible. And if I get to a point with this, which I have a couple of times where I've sort of thought, oh, this is all too much, it's too hard, I look at quilts like that and think, well, it can be done. Stick with it. Don't give up. I think it was the winning quilt. Now, I can't remember which one it was, but it is for sale, or was for sale, I don't know if it still is, for 10,000 Australian dollars, which is incredible, and it's absolutely worth that. And I just think I want to say, well, I don't think I do, I want to say it is fabulous, absolutely fabulous to see quilters putting value on their artwork, because it is artwork. It's not a craft, it is art. And it's about time these pieces were valued for what they are. And I thought it was fabulous to hear that it had a price tag of $10,000. And I hope that anyone else selling theirs had similar appropriate price tags on theirs as well. Maybe it's time for me to zoom out. I'm at the point where the seams are folded over and it gets a little bit tricky, not only to get the needle in and out, but to stop those corners from twisting back as I'm stitching. And again, they only twist a little bit, but it's enough that I can notice it, and the all-over effect in the quilt will make a difference. So if you think about it this way, if I'm out by 2 mil on each of these 4-inch blocks, in a 12-inch block that adds up to 6 mil, which is more than a 1/4 inch, I believe. And then 6 mil over another, you know, we'll say 7 across for a large size quilt. So that's 42 mil in total, that if you're out by 2 mil on each of these 4-inch blocks. So that definitely adds up. You will notice that. I'm getting close, guys. I'm getting close to the end. We're at the point where I've only got about 1/2 inch left to stitch. Oh no, 3/4. Because this is a 1.5 inch. No, that doesn't add up either. See, I'm no good at math. I can't math. Got half of this 1 1/4 inch block to go. Crikey. I'll tell you what, I think I need to buy, and look, I'm trying really hard to not buy any more stuff, but, and I do have hundreds of needles, but I don't seem to have any good all-purpose quilting needles anymore, stitching needles that don't have barbs on the end or rust up them. So I might need to buy some more needles. I'm at the point where I'm doing that holding stitch. Hopefully, when I open this up, those seams meet perfectly, but there is no guarantee when I'm doing it this way. Let's pull out this basting gently as she goes. Wrong end. You silly goose, where is that gone? Okay. Now I did put at the start a little bit of a gentle holding stitch on that basting, so I can't just pull it. I could probably go like this though. There we go. So now I can pull it out. Now let's see the magic, hopefully. And how does that point look? Does that meet up neatly? I'm pretty pleased with that. What do you think? Finger, 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 and I'm stretching the fabric as I'm doing that, which is not what we want to do. This is a no-no, really. It's going to stretch the fabric. Look at that big lump there. It's all folded nicely. So there we go. That is my process for doing these blocks so far. There's another one I can add to my 4.5 inch pile. Now the other thing I was going to show you, which I think I touched on briefly last time, is all the little bits that aren't big enough to fit in the quilt. All these little pieces, some of them have interfacing on them, some of them don't. So all these little pieces of fabric that aren't quite big enough, that's big enough, that needs to go in that bin. It's in the wrong pile. That's big enough, but I don't think I want to use that. Some of these are a bit too small. I've got quite a bit. Look, this bit, I can't really reuse that. That's That's a bit too small. That little bit I might be able to. Let's trim this off. We'll trim off these little tentacles. Little tentacles. And all these little bits. Little bits. Little bits. That one might be a bit too small. I don't think I can do much with that bit. All these little bits. See, that's too small. And these tentacles are too small, so let's trim them off. They're not much chop for anything, but they're all right. Let's get rid of these tiny little bits. This is precious, so that's actually not to stay in there. I put them in the wrong box because I was in a hurry. And now here we go back to our little offcuts. So we've got all these. This box is primarily all these little offcuts that aren't big enough for pieces in the quilt. That one I could get a piece out, but there's not much pattern there. So by the time I do the 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to lose most of that. And I don't really want empty, unpatterned pieces in it. So the reason I'm keeping all these is because, see, that's a bit of French vintage. Look at that, double-sided. Isn't it incredible? That's from the cello. Some of these vintage fabrics, and this is a bit of Liberty, Hello Kitty, Tanner Lawn that Beck brought back from Japan. I just think these are too precious to not keep. This is a bit of that 1920s fabric from the cushion that I reclaimed. And these are bits from Sue from the duvets that she reclaimed. These pieces are so fine. But I'm digging down here to show you why I'm keeping all these bits and what I'm doing with them at the moment. That one's a bit small to do much with, but that's a lovely vintage piece. I am making, and I shouldn't show this because this is going to someone for a swap. I am using these little tiny pieces to make patches or bits of fabric. So hopefully you can see what I've done here. I've quilted sort of like a quilt as you go. I've started in here somewhere. Look how tiny some of these pieces are. Look at that piece in there. That tiny piece there. So I've sort of done quilt as you go. Look at that little bit of Liberty in there. And that bit, it's a petite pan. And then this particular piece I've done a cantha stitch over. I haven't done them all that way. This is just all scrap bits that aren't big enough for the quilt. Beautiful vintage pieces that I don't want to throw away. And look how fine some of these pieces are, how narrow they are. But I've just hand stitched them all together and made little bits of fabric. Yes, I wrote those and stitched them. I've got more to do. So this box, as I said, that's bits of vintage quilt from Beck that I'm going to make needlebooks with. But this is mainly all these little trimmy off-cut bits that I'm going to use to stitch together. So that's actually big enough to go in the quilt. So I probably will do another video on just how I'm doing those as well, if you're interested. But I just wanted to show you, if you've got precious vintage fabrics or, you know, Liberty or things like that that you don't want to just toss out, that's an idea of what you do. I mean, you could stitch them all together and cut out hearts and use them as patches on your jeans or something like that. You know, just keep building pieces of fabric together out of those little bits. So there we go. There's that bit. Now, I've got to neatly pile all these back up to fit back in my box. But before we go, I wanted to show you, I should do these all as separate videos really, but I come up with all these ideas and I don't want to stop. So what I've done here is I've got this beautiful vintage piece of quilt. Is it Grandmother's Garden that I bought from Christy, and so far I have basted that onto a piece of 1930s reproduction fabric. I don't know if this is going to work. I've never done it before, but I want to use this to make a pin cushion in this crystal dessert bowl, because I actually have one of these. I haven't made it into a pin cushion. It's just on my shelf, and I've got a little bit to haberdashery in there, and this bit down here is really good to put pins and little buttons and things in. So I thought this was quite versatile. I saw 3 of them a few weeks ago, and I only bought one because I had Dad with me, and I said to him, I can't really afford to buy them all. They weren't that expensive. Oh, I didn't notice oh, it's not a chip. It's very smooth. It looks like a chip, but it's not. It's a flaw in the glass. Isn't that interesting? Huh. Or it was a chip and they've sanded it, polished it, so it's not. How about that? I never noticed that. It's definitely not sharp. It's been polished. So yes, I want to try and make some pin cushions. I actually found, I forgot to bring it out. I've been looking for an old trophy, and my dad gave me one of his, but it's plastic, and I'm worried that the plastic will break, and it's not the look I'm after. But I finally found, I thought I had one that I got from my uncle's years ago. I was going to use as a trophy for our darts championship we have every year with our family, but the ashes. It's been sitting in my cupboard, and I actually found it today. I was quite excited, so I'm going to use that to make a pin cushion. And I also found this beautiful depression glass dessert bowl that I think I'll make into a pin cushion as well. 50 cents. I think that is stunning, and that has a slight little lip on the bottom there as well, that it's not as shaped as that one. I've been pulling things out to turn into pin cushions. I actually bought a couple of teacups as well. I've got a cupboard full of bloody teacups, but I bought another 2 a few weeks ago because they were stunning. There's a beautiful vintage blue one and a beautiful vintage pink one that, looking at them, are most likely in 30s, 40s. They're quite old, but they're Australian made porcelain, and one of them still has the original brand label sticker on the bottom, which I've never seen before. So I was really excited about that. So now I don't want to use them and glue them together and make them into pin cushions. I've also got this. I bought this years ago, this little crystal bowl. I don't know if it was originally a little salt pot, maybe you had a little silver spoon on the table. I don't know. I need to look into it a bit more. But it has a silver lip on it. It needs a bit of a clean. And again, I paid 50 cents for it a few years ago now. And I bought this to turn into a pin cushion. So I reckon this one would be nice with some, not this one, because this one's a bit precious, some Liberty pin cushion. And I'm going to stuff them all with sheep's wool, pure wool, because that is supposed to preserve your needles. Not like fiberfill. Fiberfill doesn't stop them from rusting. Crushed walnut shell is probably the best, but I only have a small bag I bought years ago from the craft fair, and I've actually bought it for a specific project I'm doing. But anyway, that's where I'm up to. I hope you've enjoyed that or learned something, or maybe you can actually point something out to me that I should learn. I don't know. As I mentioned, I do things not necessarily the correct way. I don't know if that's the right word to use, the traditional way. I do form my own methods for a lot of things so I can get the finish that I want. And it seems to work, because usually I get a lot of nice comments, or how on earth did you do that? That's amazing, that sort of thing. But anyway, I will leave it at that. Oh, I did want to show you one more thing. I think I showed this in the last video, but see this little Ziploc bag? It is currently working as a little hothouse, and because, oops, they're all slid down, I probably need to fix that a bit. It does have, I'm trying to grow some, why are those ones all bunched in the corner? That's not cool, dude. You guys need to spread out a bit again. Must have blown across the table and they've bunched up a bit. I'm trying to grow some kaffir lime. I was really excited earlier. Some of them have green shoots coming out, but now I'm looking, I can only see one. I hope they're okay. But I found a YouTube tutorial. I'd never actually had. I was just putting some air in it so it's not sitting on the seeds. It's formed into a little miniature greenhouse again. Until, was it last week or the week before, someone gave me a couple of kaffir limes, and I don't remember ever having them before, and they look like, they're all wrinkly. They look like a bit of a green brain, I suppose, if you've never seen them. And when I realized what they were, I was incredibly excited, and I thought, is there any way, how can I best use these limes? I had 4. So I didn't have anything at the time to specifically use them in. So I Googled and found this fellow, and he peels all the skin, the rind off without the pith, and puts it all in a container and freezes it so he can chop that up and use it as he needs it while he's cooking. He also extracts all the juice and puts that in a little container and freezes that, and I have been using that. I'm really impressed. And he kept all the seeds, and the seeds are challenging because you've got to rinse them a few times, and then you've got to, they're tiny little citrus seeds, and you've got to peel the outer husk off them, but they're slippery because all the not the gelatin, the pectin is coming out, so they're really slippery, and you've got to try and peel it off, and then you put them on the paper towel and make the little greenhouse to get them to grow. I got sick of doing it. I only did the ones in that bag, and I left the rest of the seeds in some water overnight, and when I came back, so much pectin had come out. They were just sitting in this jelly. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it before. So I have dried them out. I don't know if I will be able to use them. I don't know if they will activate again, but I'm hoping they will, because I'm not entirely sure these are all, I might only get 1 out of this, and I was hoping to get at least 3 so I could give 1 to my dad and 1 to my son, plant them and use them. So I'm going to say goodbye here, guys. I want to fold up all my my cutout pieces now for my quilt and put them back in my container so they're all organized. And yeah, I'll sign off. I'll say goodnight. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this, learning a bit more of my process. And stay tuned for part 3. I don't know what I'm going to do in part 3, but we'll see, hey? Thanks again.